Stan here, once again, shooting the next video for Silverline's YouTube channel, which again, hopefully many of you will find very, very useful. And it is a video on understanding the MPL, which stands for Multi-Crew Pilot License. The reason why I'm shooting this video is because, having worked and volunteered at many open days and spoken to many, many people, certainly in this line of work, they are often completely misunderstood about what the MPL actually is, what it gives you, and whether you're indeed eligible to do an MPL course. MPL came into the industry a few years ago now. It's been in development for many, many years. I can speak a little bit of depth about it because I am an MPL instructor. I have taught airline cadets, airline MPL cadets, and advised many people on what the MPL actually is. So what is it? The MPL is an airline-specific course. For many, many years, modular and integrated training courses have been the norm. That's your route to no flying experience to gaining employment with an airline operator. The philosophy has started to change. With airline travel increasing, airlines have thought that actually what is better is that rather than traditionally pilots will get much more experience on light aircraft, they think it's a bit more fitting to actually gain a lot more experience and training on the airline aircraft that they're actually going to be flying on. Therefore, what an MPL actually is, what I mean by an airline-specific course is that an MPL is actually offered by an approved training organisation in collaboration with a specific airline. What I mean by that is an MPL is not a standalone training course that a flight school can develop. It has to be run in collaboration with an airline, and it is actually an airline-specific course. So if you go to selection with an MPL flight school for a specific airline, then what you're actually doing is you're going to be undergoing a course, MPL course, providing you pass selection, which is going to be completely geared around the airline in question and the way they operate, the way they would like you to be trained. Now, of course, the Civil Aviation Authority and many different authorities around the world, regulatory authorities, will lay down the guidance and the framework by which an MPL course has to be constructed. But of course, the flight school or the approved training organisation will then develop that course with a specific airline. And just to give you an example, Virgin Atlantic have launched an MPL program. Flybe, easyJet. There are many airlines which have offered different MPL programs, but these programs are specific to the way that the actual airline in question operates. Okay, so don't go to an open day and ask someone, I think I'm just going to enroll on an MPL course. It seems pretty good. I'll gain employment straight away with an airline. Well, it's not quite as simple as that. You need to be very clear as to what the MPL actually offers, what it gives you, the pros and the cons. And I'm going to go into that now. So we understand basically what an MPL is and why it's come about. It's much more airline focused rather than lots of light aircraft flying, and it's specific to the actual airline. So they're getting a product at the end of it, which is much more geared and aware of what the airline's procedures are. So the MPL is similar in duration to an ab initio integrated training course, about 18 months or so, but it's constructed quite differently. So you go to selection with an an approved training organisation, and providing you're successful, then you'll undergo and start your MPL course. And it's constructed of four main phases: the core phase, the basic phase, the intermediate phase, and the advanced phase. Now, I'm counting on those that are watching this video to have a little bit of an understanding of a modular or an integrated course and how it's constructed, just a little bit. Because it's important to understand that and then compare it to how the MPL course actually differs. So the core phase is basically the basic light aircraft flying elements, just teaching the new pilot how an aircraft flies and some basic flight manoeuvres. Phase 2, so the basic phase, you're going straight into the multi-crew philosophy, whereas on a modular and integrated course of old, it will take you a much longer period of time before you even consider multi-crew flying. But of course, these guys are going to be going straight onto an airliner, so it kind of makes sense to start to introduce this stuff now, and that will be done in a simulator, in generally a smaller type training simulator, to think about the multi-crew aspects, so flying with 2 crew. After that phase, it's the intermediate phase, which is basically undergoing training in an airline simulator, but learning the basic instrument flying manoeuvres and techniques that modular integrated students would have done on a multi-engine aircraft. But these guys are doing it in a full flight simulator, because of course it's an airline course, and these guys are learning how to fly airliners much sooner than obviously more traditional flight training courses. After they've done their instrument rating and their instrument training on a full flight simulator, so basic tracking and basic instrument manoeuvres, learning how to fly in cloud, etc., then they'll go on to the advanced phase, which is basically the type rating, so learning how to fly the specific aircraft type that they're going to be flying when they join the airline in question. For example, Virgin Atlantic MPL cadets will do a type rating on the Airbus A330, because that is what they're going to be flying when they fly the line. For easyJet, it'll be the Airbus A320. Flybe, it'll be the Dash 8, so on and so forth. So they're the 4 main phases. Now, traditionally, with an integrated or modular course, you are assessed based on both your ability but also a minimum amount of hours that you need to complete to be granted your license. MPL has tried to shift away from that philosophy, and it's much more competency based. What I mean by that is, continuously through the entire course, although there is an hourly requirement for each phase, which those that developed the MPL course tried to get away from, but the regulators thought, well, no, we need to have an hourly requirement. We need to guarantee that these guys have done the minimum amount of flying hours before they pass the course. By being competency based, what it means is that every single lesson, every single exercise, they are being continuously assessed on their theoretical knowledge, as well as practically flying the aircraft, about their competency to do with the theoretical side of things. So on every single exercise, they'll be questioned on elements of certain exercises. So, what is lift? What's the lift equation? And much more advanced, describe the hold, elements of the hold, or an instrument landing system, etc. Such like. So, and the reporting structure, because as I say, I was an MPL instructor for a flight school. How you report and how you assess these guys is much different to how you do with an integrated or modular course. It's very, very competency based. Whether you're competent in your theoretical thinking and practically, etc., rather than just simply passing a skills test on an integrated or modular course, which actually does make a lot of sense. It keeps you on your toes, perhaps a little bit more. So that's that's sort of the main differences going through the actual course itself. Now, what are the pros of an MPL course? Well, the pros is that once you pass selection, you are, providing you meet the standard throughout the course and the airline remains solvent, then you will secure employment straight away with that airline, because remember, it is an airline specific course. You're doing their course, okay? So that's a pro. You can go through flight training knowing that you are the airline cadet and you're going to go straight onto an employment rather than wait or wonder if you are going to gain employment. So that's fantastic. And of course, another pro is that you're going to be going onto an established carrier, which is putting their faith on brand new cadets and bringing them through and nurturing new talent. A negative, which is what's really important to understand, this is absolutely key, which people don't understand, is that if for whatever reason you go through the course and you don't meet the standard, so what I was talking about a second ago, if you're deemed not competent, then potentially you will need to leave the course, and this is key, because with an MPL course you don't gain a private pilot license, you don't gain a commercial pilot license. All you gain traditionally is an instrument rating, but that instrument rating is specific to multi-crew or multi-pilot aircraft, okay? So what that means is that with an MPL, you complete the MPL course normally, that's fine. You then go on to the airline in question, but your training's not over, your license isn't over at that point. So you join the airline, you're sat in the right-hand seat, and you then need to complete 1,500 hours of multi-crew flying time until you can then convert to an unfrozen air transport pilot license, which is the traditional license which all pilots want to have, which then enables them to apply to other airlines. So what I'm basically saying is that if you drop out of the course, then you don't have any other basic flying qualifications to fall back on. You've got nothing, unless the flight school in question has in place a program by which they will teach you and put you through other flying courses, which will enable you to then build up to a frozen ATPL, okay, which is, again, as I say, traditionally what all pilots wanted, because universally that's what the airlines looked for. So that's really, really key. Also, another point, of course, is that if the airline goes insolvent, if the airline has a problem and they decide to cut their MPL cadet program, well then where do you go? As I say, you've got no PPL, you've got no CPL, you've got no single or multi-engine IR rating. Therefore, you don't have any of the building blocks by which you can then build up to a frozen ATPL to then apply to another airline. So basically, you don't have anything. You've got nothing. You've got nothing until you complete those 1,500 hours flying time with the airline. You don't have anything. Okay, so it's really important to understand that. There are big pros to it, but also there's a big con as well. You've not got a lot of security if you don't meet the standard or the airline decides to cut their program. Does it happen often? No, but an example is Monarch Airlines, when they were in trouble recently, they had an MPL program which they cut. Where did the guys go? Well, they were extremely lucky that easyJet ran an MPL program. The cadets in question weren't too far down the line with their flight training, and easyJet decided to take them on and put them through their MPL program, which is a risk for easyJet, because you've got to remember that the Monarch MPL program is a specific Monarch program, gearing the students up towards Monarch procedures, the Monarch way of life and doing things. So easyJet had to kind of make them unlearn what they'd learned and put them through the easyJet specific MPL program. So that's a practical example of the risks involved. They were really lucky that they were taken on. Otherwise, they would have to go back to square one. They've got no PPL, no CPL, no IR to fall back on and go from. They've got to do the whole thing again. Okay, so it's really important to understand that there is a big risk involved. Well, of course, and financially as well. It's about £120,000 in total. And of course, as I say, providing you meet the standard, etc., you'll go onto the airline and you'll gain employment. There's no uncertainty there, but of course, loan repayments are potentially going to be quite big as well. So you've just got to consider that. And there's much less focus on the basic lighter aircraft flying side of things. So a lot of critics will say, well, these guys don't know how to fly an aircraft, all that sort of stuff. Well, I can actually say, because I've taught the guys, I've come across many MPL guys and spoken to a lot of captains who have flown with these guys. So don't listen to P-Prune, don't listen to people that don't know what they're talking about. These guys are very switched on, they're very good, they pass lots of selection processes. They've done all the bits and bobs they need to do. So that they do know how to fly an aircraft. It may take them maybe a little bit longer to learn the basics and the fundamentals of how to physically land an aircraft, but they know what they're doing. When it comes to base training, these guys have to do 12 takeoffs and 12 landings, rather than the traditional 6 takeoffs and 6 landings of base training if you've gone through a modular and integrated route on a normal type rating. So, it's one of those things. But hopefully this has given you a bit of insight as to what the MPL actually is, understanding it. So, in summary, MPL is a multi-crew pilot license, which is an airline-specific program. It's developed in collaboration with an approved training organisation to teach the student everything they need to know geared towards that specific airline. Okay, it's not a generic license, and that's important to understand. It's comprised of 4 main phases: the core phase, the basic phase, the intermediate, and the advanced phase. None of those phases teaches you or gives you a PPL, a CPL, or a traditional IR. The only thing you get is an instrument rating, but that is specific to multi-pilot aircraft, and that is important, okay? If there's a problem, you've got nothing to fall back on at all, okay? So that's really, really important. It's expensive. But then again, you're guaranteed, hopefully, employment thereafter if the airline remains solvent, etc. But yeah, from my experience, all I can say is they're switched on guys. They're really great guys. And if anyone has any questions or anything you'd like to get from an actual student's point of view, I have many friends that are MPL guys, come in contact with them all the time. Just as I say, as always, comment, message, etc., interact, and I can put your questions to them, or indeed if you have any questions to me, I'll obviously gladly answer them. And the same is for Trev as well. He's very knowledgeable about this subject as well. If I've missed anything, or if there's anything you think, oh, actually I'd quite like to know that, I wish he touched upon that, just ask me, okay, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So please subscribe, please message, get in touch. Hopefully you found it useful. See you later. Oh, actually, I forgot to say, just recently got back from a skiing trip with a few Cathay Pacific pilots, fantastic, great guys. But I only mention this because if any of you have been thinking about the second officer or direct entry FO program with Cathay or indeed Cathay Dragon, then I can put questions to them, etc. as well, and I've got lots of resources in that department. So yeah, just far away, and we'll do all we can to help. Cheers.